Have you read any good books lately? When it comes to books, there are good books, there are mediocre books, there are disappointing books. Sometimes we come across a book we might even call a great book. And I'd like to talk today about the classic by Leonard Ravenhill called Why Revival Tarries. It really is an excellent book. I can honestly say that after the Word of God, I would rank it in the top 5 books I've ever read. I don't think there's a book I've ever loaned to more people or recommended to more people apart from the Bible than this one. He was an interesting character. He was from England. He was a preacher with a real evangelistic and revival edge. He moved from England to the United States and ended up settling in Texas. He was a friend of Keith Green's. He was a friend of A.W. Tozer. They were similar in some ways in that they both had an edgy message and were not afraid to call a spade and call out sin in the church. And he certainly does in his book. So Leonard Ravenhill, he just had a knack of coming out with these one-liners. They've been called zingers, where he would just say things and in a few words he'd really cut to the bone and get people thinking about important issues. For example, here are some of his quotes from the book. He said, "The Cinderella of the church today is the prayer meeting. This handmaid of the Lord is unloved. At this grim hour, the world sleeps in the darkness and the church sleeps in the light." That's quite typical of the way that Leonard Ravenhill would write. It was very confrontational, even a take no prisoners kind of style, where he was not afraid to really just confront people and get people thinking about issues like prayerlessness and so on in the church. And then he would come out with these really thought-provoking questions like these. Have we a pain in our hearts for perishing men? What church ever asks its candidating ministers what time they spend in prayer? He will put these questions out there to really get people thinking and to do some self-analysis and think about, the state of the church. Now, A.W. Tozer, who was a friend of Leonard Ravenhill's, he wrote the foreword and he talked of Leonard Ravenhill in these terms. He said, quote, "His ministry was geared to the emergency." He really sensed that this was a timely book. It really does have a prophetic edge. I would highly recommend Why Revival Tarries, written back in 1959, but still very relevant to the modern church. I had a quick look tonight and this book is still available on Book Depository. So I would strongly recommend young people, pastors, Bible college students, any Christian who's willing to take some strong medicine and hear something that's challenging about Christianity and where we're at in our Christian lives and so on. I would highly recommend Why Revival Tarries by Leonard Ravenhill.